Welcome to Disruptive Minds Business Podcast. I'm your host, Tevia Hoalst of Dakota Accounting. Please welcome today our guest, Mark Worster, founder of The New Mysteries, which we will delve into shortly. Also, former CEO of Unitel, which he sold. We'll get into that as well. Military veteran and speaker. Welcome, Mark.
Well, thanks for having me here today. I'm so
Yeah.
excited to have this conversation. Oh my
Oh,
God, here we go.
I've been so looking forward to this. I haven't had anybody on that I know of, any, I guess, that
Mm,
has sold a company. So I
mm.
do want to start. Well, I'll start with my typical question because we're disruptive minds over here.
Mhm.
So easy lob for you, in
Yeah.
especially the new space you're in,
Mhm.
is tell me about something that you would consider disruptive in your experience, current or past.
Oh my gosh, there was so many. Oh my God. Well, the business that I had before, 30 years in IT, right? It was disruptive every 2 years. Every
Mm-hmm.
2 years, I had
Yep.
to reinvent the company because something disruptive would happen. So, chaos and disruption are sort of my mainstay. It's what I do, right?
Yeah.
So what I do now in my current calling, I guess is what you'd say, is I provide disruptive experiences for primarily entrepreneurs, but anyone that really shakes them to the core and moves them in ways that they had no idea that they could go in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in getting into that conversation. I'm going to
Mm,
do it a little bit later, but
yeah.
my husband's in the health space and very, very intrigued. We were just having
Mm,
a conversation this weekend about the new company. So,
mm,
little teaser there for our listeners that I'll bring that up again. But I do want to go, I'm not going to go way, way back in the
yeah.
machine, but I do
Mm,
want to go to the point of Unitel where you did sell and
yeah.
that scenario, because we do have clients or as
Mm,
clients, listeners that
mm,
potentially want to sell one day, whether it's on their mind or
yeah.
not. And so
Yeah.
I love to hear experience shares on what brought you to the idea that you were going to sell, or how did it, I should say, get
Yeah.
brought to you, but
Yeah.
also, what did you do to be ready for that? And what
Mhm.
was unexpected that you went through, if
Uh,
anything?
wow. This is like a topic that we could talk about for days,
Good.
really. So I think the beginning of sort of the end for me was I went and did this program called Landmark. And Landmark Worldwide is an organization, it's been around 35 years or so. And and it's really a human potential accelerator, right? So you do these weekend programs where you'd show up and you dive deep into the content. And as a result of doing that, I ended up in this space of, well, I can do anything with my life. Before it was lifestyle business. I come from people who trade time for money, right? All my
Mhm.
grandparents, my parents, they trade time for money. You never like even conceive that you could do anything other than that. And so I was in this space of, well, hell, I can do anything. I was like, well, I don't want to shut computers and technology anymore. I want to do something in the healthcare space. Didn't even know what it was, but I knew I wanted to do something. So I started down the path of looking at that, and I ran the numbers and I determined I couldn't go back to school and become a surgeon because I'd never pay the debt off, right? I really love surgery. I would love to have become a surgeon at some point, but I decided that I would become a nurse. And so I went to school nights and weekends, starting in 2012 to prepare myself to kind of exit the company. So I knew in 2012 that I was headed that way. It was 2017 before I ever executed. But I knew that I needed to, like, I just knew that I needed to start down the path. And then, I got my nursing degree and then I put it on the side. Like I didn't do anything in the nursing space. And I just focused on kind of setting the company up to maximize my exit. And I
Mhm.
ended up selling to my partner,
Okay.
who is my younger brother, by the way. So that adds a
Oh,
whole other
okay.
nuance, right?
Sure.
So if there are family businesses like or like family related businesses out there, wow, boy, oh boy, hold on, because that really impacted my negotiation, right? Because
Yes.
I was a majority shareholder. I could have sold the company to anybody, and I had explored, um, you know, buying and selling of companies over the course of that 30 years. I dove into that a lot and had a lot of deals come right to the signing of the paperwork and fall apart. So I knew the multiple ways it could go sideways, but I knew I would have to sit across the Thanksgiving table from my brother.
Mhm.
So I couldn't, sell it out from underneath him. I had to make a deal work with him that would work for both of us. And at the end of the day, after really a year of like hard negotiating and figuring out how we would make this happen, we were able to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you approach that in the way that like you went and figured out what the numbers would be for an external,
Oh yeah.
buyer and
Yeah, yeah.
then work backwards into that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, over the years, we learned how to be in business. I mean, when we started, we had no clue, and there were a lot of mistakes that would just tank a company from the beginning that we made. And I think that, they're great because now I have that experience I can share with other people. But we had a really good buy sell agreement. Like we knew what we would do in the case that one of us wanted to get out. We would, do a business valuation. We'd get it from two different disparate companies. He'd get one, I'd get one. We'd come together, we'd compare the numbers.
That's so
And,
smart.
yeah, yeah, because it gets rid of all of the, well, I think it's worth this emotional,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And oh, I think it's worth this. We've got two independent parties who say, this is what our experience is. It's what we do for a living. We value businesses. We say it's worth this. And we really weren't that far off.
Mm.
At the end of the day, both companies agreed that, the value of the business was X. And, then it was just, okay, how do we structure a deal so that he can pay it out,
Right.
not bankrupt the company and keep it a solvent company? And it's still running today, and he's super successful. And it's a great lifestyle business, which is what he always wanted, which was
Mm.
great. And I've moved on to what I'm definitely supposed to be doing at this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Mm.
Well, the couple of points there, I think takeaways for our listeners would be number one, whether you're working with family, friends,
Mhm.
or just a typical partner,
Yeah.
is having that conversation early in your documentation before there's any strife or any emotions involved with
Absolutely.
later. I'd throw
Yeah.
out there, I have recently made a partner in my company over the
Hmm.
last year, and we did the same. We too have a clause in there that, of course, we'll get a valuation externally,
Hmm.
but we determined now the multiplier that we would use then.
Yeah.
And you want to make those decisions when everybody's happy and on the same page.
Oh.
And I'd also have, another takeaway summarization that I heard there
Hmm.
too is it's so important to determine now, again, when everybody's happy and you don't think things are ever going to happen,
Hmm.
how are we going to do the payout? Because if things go south or, you have this is such an interesting dynamic because
Hmm.
nothing went south, but you still had to have a win-win and nobody like being up over the other because you were
Yeah.
family and you wanted it to stay that way.
Yeah.
And the company has to be able to afford the buyout. And
Yes.
if someone's going out in a negative manner or just wanting to get everything they can, and they're no longer going to be involved, they might not be as invested in the company being solvent on the other end of it. So incredibly important to have those conversations. So
Hmm.
I love that takeaway.
Yeah.
Um, so important for people to
Yeah.
understand there.
I mean, the money that you spend on a good corporate attorney in the beginning is going to
Yep.
pay dividends if anything goes sideways. And life has so many different things that happen. There's a million different reasons why somebody would want to be out of a business or a partnership. I mean, it's just the course of life. So having all of that structure in place up front and saying, this is what we agree to,
Hmm.
minimizes any of the, hard stuff that's usually at a hard place, right? When I
Yes.
when I left the company after 30 years of being, the guy who founded it and the CEO, and I thought I was ready because I prepared, starting in 2012, right? I had this mentality. Oh my God, no. I mean, when it was done and I wasn't a CEO anymore, who the hell was I? Like I went through
Yes.
this crisis of identity crisis of who the hell am I now?
I have
Yeah.
heard that it's very common for even
Hmm.
when you know you're going out, it's been your choice to sell or step
Yeah.
away, the identity connection
Oof.
to CEO or founder, and
Yeah.
now who am I? And I
Hmm.
think there's an important takeaway there too, to like work on while things are good, while things are happy, who
Yeah.
are you outside of the
Mm.
business and
Yeah.
develop that,
Yep.
before it comes crashing down, because that happens to a lot of entrepreneurs.
It absolutely does. And I know that people struggle. And, I work with a lot of people in that transformative moment because, what I do is help give clarity, right?
Yeah.
And one really smart thing, I'm going to give myself credit on this one. When,
Please.
when I closed on the deal, I had already lined up sitting back in the landmark forum experience, right? Which is where you really connect to, you get to say what your life is, you get to determine what it is, regardless of what anybody else thinks. So at that moment of transitioning out, I had this powerful re experience that kind of helped a lot. It helped a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I also think that's so important, is another takeaway is make sure you're visualizing, where do I want to go with this? And
Mm,
maybe that path as yours has been is not always the same path, but prepping for that ahead of time, of course,
mm,
as anything, will set you up for the most success. So,
right.
okay, in a little bit of a transition, I'll come back. I have
Yep.
some CEO questions I want to ask. However, I
Mhm.
am so intrigued to hear about the new mysteries. So,
Ooh.
first and foremost, you mentioned just your interest in the health space, but
Yep.
it's such a big shift, tech space to health and wellness. How
Yeah.
did that come about for you? Start there and then tell us what new mysteries is, and
Yeah.
what do your customers get out of your experience?
Yeah, boy, there's so much in there. Yeah, so, transitioning from, being the CEO of a tech company to being a nurse, being in the healthcare space and not really knowing where I fit. The first thing that popped up for me was the cannabis space, and I was completely agnostic. Like I didn't use cannabis, I didn't care if you did. And it was right when, everything started to reach the tipping point and, states were just going crazy and legalizing cannabis. And so I went and I got a master's degree and I was literally, I was one of the first 138 people with a graduate degree in cannabis science and therapeutics.
Wow.
So from a healthcare standpoint, and it just opened my eyes to, the reality of how things become illegal and the
Mm,
motivations that happen. Now, in the case of cannabis and psychedelic medicines, they were completely political decisions. They were used to control a certain population and not science backed at all. Now, when you get past that and you get to the science of it, it's like, oh my God, these are miracle drugs. These are miracle medicines. Like, so I dove into that and then ended up where I am now in this space that I just am so in love with and so enjoy. Yeah.
yes.
But
So,
I'm a psychiatric nurse by vocation, by training. My when I worked in the nursing field, it's in the acute care setting. Like I'm with people who are in lockdown without any shoelaces or belts.
wow.
And yeah, and part of my story is I was one of them. Like there
Oh,
was a time, so I had treatment resistant depression my whole life as part of programming that I got as a little boy. And it resulted in treatment resistant depression, which means I tried every drug, every modality, everything that the psychiatric community had to offer. None of it worked. And, with what I do now, it's been almost 4 years, medication depression free, living a life just filled with joy and happiness.
wow.
But,
Good for you.
so when I walk on the acute care floor, I know where they're at, right? And they
Yeah.
know that I know. They can feel it. And so for me, that was where I was supposed to be.
Mm.
And, being in the mental health and wellness space is just it's my calling. It's where I'm supposed to be because I've got all of that experience of having gone through
Yeah.
all of the Western medicine into more of the sacred medicine space is what I'd call it.
Yes. Well, I
Yeah.
don't I don't want to skim over that. I don't think I
Mm,
have the words to verbalize how just impressed I am of the short
mm,
time I've known you, just
mm.
really where you're mentioning where you came from to where you are
Yeah.
today, because you exude such amazing frequency that I just love.
Yes.
It just
Oh my
energizes
God.
the room. I love that so much.
Oh.
And so I can just conceptually understand
Mhm,
the lengths
mhm.
to which you went to get there. And I just really applaud
I'm
that. So,
so, there's a point, and I think this is common for everyone who's got some sort of mental health issue, where you feel like you're broken. Like
mm,
that's the story you have. You compare yourself to everybody else. You're like, I'm broken. I mean, it's just the way it is. I was never broken. I was just programmed for a certain outcome, right? I'm like a
mm,
computer, and you put a program in and it's going to give this outcome every time. I just had to reprogram all that stuff. And now I have a different outcome. And the outcome happens to be
yeah.
joy and happiness and love. Like I say to people all the time, I can't imagine that there's any one thing that could be added to my life that would make it any better. I
Oh
mean,
my
and to
gosh.
live in that space after being in depression and suicidality, over a course of, a lifetime, oh, it's just, it's, it's beyond explanation. It really
Yeah,
is.
I can't.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm having a hard time even like verbalizing
You
what I'm
can.
hearing. It's just
Yeah.
because the space to move from such a dark space to being not only a light for yourself, and that's
Mm.
such a great mentality of like it's just a reprogramming, and
That's
it's
all it is.
possible.
Nobody's
You know,
broken.
Everybody
Nobody's
should look
broken.
into neurological pathways. Those can be
Yeah.
reworked. I mean, it's
Hmm.
such an interesting space.
Right.
And anything you're struggling with can be
Right.
addressed in different ways. So
But that
thank you.
translates into, we're on a podcast about business, about entrepreneurship, about these things. What I'm talking about, may not seem to be related to that, but it's
Oh,
completely related to it
100%.
because what you do in your life is an expression of that programming. So if you
Mhm.
get all of that out of the way, how powerful are you going to be in your business life, let alone the rest of your life?
Well,
It's
and
amazing.
I would even challenge that further to say
Mm,
that I don't think it's off base to say a lot of entrepreneurs that
mhm.
rise to this external drive that is higher than other people's to achieve
Yeah.
probably comes from sometimes some unhealthy programming. So there's actually maybe like
Hello.
a closer connection to the need of
Yeah.
that, which is exactly why you're in your space is,
Yeah.
these are both your people and you're helping them.
Yes.
So
Right. Yeah. I
with
mean,
that,
the programming may
yeah.
may may not be, a great program, but it could give you a great life,
Hmm.
but not
Well,
one of your choice. Like
I've
you'll
always
get to the
said,
end and not be satisfied with it. You'll be like, shit, I'm already here. I got all the money I want. I got all the
oh,
toys. Why am I so dissatisfied? Right?
yeah.
That's what happens. Yeah.
I have taken the example that I've seen in my life of other
Mm,
people that have really like made it.
yeah.
And I feel super fortunate. Or really early on, I was able to step away with a different lens and say,
Mhm.
like, not just who's achieved what I want to achieve, but who's living the life that I'm interested in. And
Yeah.
I will tell you that most of the people that I have seen achieve big things in business, in financially, all these things, some of the most unhappy people I've ever met. And so I grabbed
Yeah.
onto that and was like, no, we don't repeat that. We come over here and say, well, what life do we want to have? We
Mhm.
build from there and we do it in a healthy way that, we can also financially support it. That's so
Yeah.
important to do and
Yeah.
not just drive for a goal because of maybe some early unhealthy programming and you're trying to prove something and you push everyone away or
Yeah.
whatever your
Yeah.
story
Yeah.
might
Yeah.
be. So
Well, listen, when I sold the company, I also, I lived in the same town my whole life, 56 years, next door to my mother, which was next door to her parents, right? So it was like my great grandfather bought the land in 1920. And I lived there my whole life until I sold my company. And then I sold my house. I sold my boat. I sold
ooh,
my Harley. I sold all of it. I got rid of it because I had always had this yearning inside of me to see what it was like to just let go of having to have possessions.
mm,
And I can remember being on my boat in Boston Harbor, and I was really an avid fisherman, and it's a beautiful summer night, and the sun setting, and I'm by myself. And I'm thinking, this is so beautiful. Why am I not happy?
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like this is an idyllic situation and I'm not happy. because I was tying my happiness to the things and the activities. Now my happiness is tied to just being in the moment, like being
Mhm.
with people, being with myself. It's such a departure from the life that I led before. I went all the way to that, you know,
Sure.
success side, and it
Mhm.
was a hollow victory for sure.
Well, I do think it's an incredible thing to note that you were able to overcorrect from that and come back to a different life because many people, it's kind of like they're too far down that path and,
Yeah,
and they're not going to change. So
right, right. No,
it's
listen, it wasn't easy.
quite disruptive actually
Listen,
that you
it
just,
wasn't easy.
no,
It
it
was
never
like
is.
I had some nights afterwards where I was thinking, what the F did you do? You got rid of the perfect life. Oh my God. And
And it
then,
wasn't.
I'd breathe, and then I'd go do this learning, and then I'd do this. And pretty soon I was like, oh no, none of that was exactly what needed to happen.
Yes. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
so tell us the new venture. What is it? Give a little more context and
Boy, I'm still we're working. I have an amazing board of directors from around the world. They're just incredible human beings, and we're kind of working on the 30-second elevator
okay.
pitch. It's like
Okay.
still don't really have it.
We're
Well, what
very
I'd say
early.
is like we're a human potential accelerator. We're using ancient modern tools and technologies to allow people to get outside of this vessel, right? I do this speaking gig, and it's called Red Pill, Blue Pill, right? It's a riff on the Matrix. And if you remember the Matrix, it was this is all an illusion. It's a computer program, and
Okay.
we need to do something to get you out. We're going to unplug you, right? And that's what I do. I unplug people. I give them a sense of what else is out there. And instead of having this limited stream of consciousness which we all just get, this limited little stream, all of a sudden after practices and in the programming that we have, it's like this. They're like, oh, I get it now. And once you're in that space, it's like, okay, well, this is just a choice, and I can just choose something else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is aided practice, or how are we going about this?
Yeah, there's different ways that it's done. There's some online programming, there's some coaching involved, there's some cohort, coaching, and this linear programming that you step through. And over the course of that, there's some, we use, for instance, breath work. We use a lot of like very powerful, I would say, psychedelic breath work, peak experience, right? If you know anything about psychology, Abraham Maslow was a famous psychologist,
Mm-hmm.
founder of transpersonal psychology, and he had this hierarchy of needs. And we in the entrepreneur space, we know about this, right? We've been exposed to it, whether it's in college or just over some training. And you know, he has these hierarchy of needs, like things that you need to take care of to be a self-actualized human being. That's like at the tip top. Well, he came back after he had presented this a number of years later, and he said, you know what? I got some additional information, everybody. There's one more level above self-actualization, and that's transcendence. That's
Mm-hmm.
self-transcendence. It's when you get outside of this whole thing and you're in a different space of, okay, well, yeah, this was great. What a great ride. Now what can I do? What can I do to
Sure.
serve? What can I do to make a difference? What's my legacy? And I just help people get to that point. Yeah.
I love
But
that.
it's magic. It is.
I know. I'm like faunching at the bit to do some of this stuff. I know,
Woo,
like I
so
mentioned, my
good.
husband's so into health and he's very
Yeah.
open to all of this stuff and the
Mhm.
meditation and all the things. So I need to get better at it.
Beautiful practice. Yeah. I mean, breath work, meditation, all of the various tools and techniques that we have available and have had available for, since the beginning of time, since we've been on this planet. So, it's just, the new mysteries is a play on the original mysteries. And,
Mm,
some of the listeners may know about that. And it's a pretty cool story. For 1,500 years in ancient Greece, they had this ceremonial thing that they would run every year, and people would come and they would apply in the beginning of the year and be an initiate, and they'd go through certain steps to get to this final big, huge celebration at the end, called the Mysteries, and it was life
Okay.
changing for the people at that time. So think, for 1,500 years consecutively, they did this,
Wow.
um, until it was shut down by one of the first Christian Roman emperors, who said, "Hey, you know what? We're picking this. Yeah, we can't have this anymore." And so they shut it down
Oh,
after 1,500 years. Yeah. So it's a fascinating story, and one that, when I heard about it, and as entrepreneurs, we don't do anything half-ass, right? So I heard this
yeah.
story. I'm like, oh my God, that's a great story. I
We're
found
bringing
all
it
of the
back.
books,
We're bringing
right?
it
I
back.
found all the books. I read all the stuff. I reached out to one of the authors, who happened to live in the Boston area, like, college professor. I just went down the rabbit hole. And like, I was actually, I was in an ayahuasca journey a few years ago, and I got this message. It's like, hey, listen, you're bringing in the new mysteries. You're going to
Gosh,
just do this. And I'm
I
like,
love it.
okay, all
Oh,
right,
well,
whatever
there
that
you go.
means.
It was
Yeah,
presented to you and you took advantage and got it
it
done. So
was.
I can't
Yeah.
wait to see where it goes. We'll have to do a
Ooh,
follow-up episode, when you're
yeah.
farther out and see what's
Oh,
going on. So
yeah.
you have a very unique perspective, right? Because
Mm,
you've done what a lot of entrepreneurs are ascending to do, which is
mhm,
build a company that gives you
yeah.
financial gain, exit
Mhm,
from it. And now you've decided to start over. So my
yeah.
question is, from that experience, and for
Mhm,
those that are in more of a startup early stage,
mhm.
what did you take from your prior experience that is helping you now? Like, almost the question of, what do you wish you knew, when you're in the big company,
Yeah.
to help you sooner? You get to
Mhm.
answer that for yourself.
Yeah, so many lessons over the course of that time. I mean, I think the first one was, really understand financial metrics, understand what's going to make your organization run. Even though this is a nonprofit, it still has to operate, it still
Yes.
has to be able to be financially solvent. And so understanding really how to read a set of financials was crucial. And I got that experience courtesy of the Bank of America, who wanted a $300,000 line of credit back. So I went into forbearance. And if, for the listeners, if you've never been in forbearance, I hope you never get there. But basically, the bank says, hey, give us our money back in 30 days, or we're going to shut you down and liquidate you.
Oh, no.
And then they say, but for $2,500 a month, we'll have someone come in and beat you with a stick every day and make sure that we squeeze every penny of money that we want back out of you. And then maybe you'll be able to operate afterwards, right? So anyway, I learned how to read financials in that year that I was in forbearance, and we paid them back. And God bless, it was one of the greatest lessons, better than any lesson I ever would have learned in MBA
Sure.
school.
Sure.
Absolutely. And
Okay.
so
So,
being able to do that, yeah.
yeah, making sure you can read your financials. So you're teaming
Mm,
me up perfect for my favorite question, which
yeah.
is the financial facts segment for our listeners, our other entrepreneurs. So from that experience, what are some things, even in your early stage, that you
Mhm,
pay attention to that help you from a financial perspective to know health, to know where you're going, to know,
mhm.
that you're on track?
Yeah. Really delineating the streams of revenue, really
Mm,
understanding where the money comes from,
mm,
and identifying, specifically for me, identifying who the likely party is that's going to want what I have to offer. Like, who
okay.
are the people, right? It says right on my shirt, it's
Identifying your
not for
customer.
everyone.
Yeah.
On average, maybe 1 or 2% of the population actually is bold enough to step in this direction. So it's a very small segment. And so
Hmm.
understanding who that is and being able to identify what it is that I can offer them, and in return receive remuneration, or as we call it in the space, an energy exchange. It's a nice way of saying, show me the money.
I like that. I haven't heard it presented in that way.
Yeah. 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 It's a
Well, and I
fancy
think
way
you're
to say it.
smart. You're so smart to come to the entrepreneurial space, right? Because what
Mm,
is an entrepreneur from the outset?
yeah,
They're an outlier in the population that will
totally.
go and do scary things when
Hmm.
others may not. So
Right.
it's a perfect niche for you. And
Hmm.
know that that's going to be a good space
Yeah.
for you to be in.
Yeah.
All right.
So
So make
curious.
sure you know your customer, make sure you know
Mhm.
how to read your financials,
Yeah.
all the things.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, so as the leader of the new mysteries, Nurse Mark, where are you spending your time and energy right now? What are you getting done? What are we focused on?
Oh my gosh. So, I've spent the last year and a half, maybe two, doing the back end stuff, making sure all of my platforms are good. Really, rolling out all of the sort of the programming, getting that all set. So, what I spend my time doing now is I travel and I do speaking events, I do breath work events, I lead ceremonies, and literally around the world. Like I'm going starting, well, I have a weekend that I'm coaching someone one on one this weekend, and then Monday I leave for Winnipeg, Canada. Then I drop into the United States for a 5 day stint in one place. Then I go to Kolkata, India. Then I go to Hawaii, which, by the way, Hawaii Global Leadership Conference,
I'll see you
Entrepreneurs
there.
Organization.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. And then, so that's what it's like. I'm always traveling. I'm always spreading the word. And it really is just like that. It's spreading the word. Yeah.
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 Amazing. Okay,
Mhm.
so you mentioned EO. I had a special question for that. For those that
Yeah.
don't know, we have met through EO, which is Entrepreneurs Organization. So tell
Amazing.
me a little bit about, for the listener, what
Yeah.
is it? But more about what has it been for
Oh
you
my God. I
and
mean, my,
your
my,
suggestion.
I said I live a life of complete joy and happiness, and it literally wouldn't have happened without EO. EO has been such a part of that. I joined in 2012, and because one of my friends in the industry I was in was having great success, and I asked him, "What's the best thing you did for your business?" He said, "I joined EO," and I said, "What the hell is that?" And so I just joined. And you know what? I was going to quit after my first year. I was going to quit because I looked at it as all of the other similar networking things that I'd done or similar mastermind groups is like, how much revenue did I get from it?
Hmm.
Well, I didn't get any. But what had happened was it shifted my perspective. And, so remember, I started down this path of exiting my business. I joined EO, which gives me all of access to these entrepreneurs who build and sell businesses over and over and over again. And I never knew that. I'm a lifestyle guy. My people trade time for money, right?
Yeah.
I don't know you can do this. All of a sudden that helped. I joined the board in 2013 because I was going to quit and I said, no, I'll give it 100% first. It literally changed the whole path of my life.
Mm.
Being exposed to people who live that life of, okay, there's a challenge, let me see how I can provide a solution, and how am I going to make a living off of this? What's the give back to the people around me? Like, it's being around people like that who think
Mhm.
differently than most people do. I mean, having access to that network, it really is. First off, it's the largest peer network of entrepreneurs in the world, like 19,000 members globally.
Mm.
And I have friends around the world, literally have friends around the world that I have visited. And, doesn't matter what one big takeaway was, it doesn't matter what country you live in, what type of government is installed, what religion you are, what, your life circumstances are. The end of the day, we're all dealing with the same exact
Mhm.
problems because they're human problems and we're all the same. That
Yeah.
was an epiphany for me. Yeah. So it's yeah, one of the best things that I've ever done for sure. Top three.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say
Yeah.
two takeaways I'm hearing there that have equally been my experience is when I started traveling in my life, and I would just anyone should be traveling, but also
Yeah.
get your kids traveling
Yeah.
because I was lucky. I was 15 years old. I was recruited to a national soccer team actually to travel and play internationally. And that
Ooh,
experience to me opened me up to what you're saying that
yeah.
our world is only the 5 or 10 people we spend our time with generally, but
Mhm.
when you start
Mhm.
traveling you do see more of the world. It changes your perspective.
Totally.
It's not about this little universe that you have anymore.
Mhm.
You see how small you are in the world, but also the likenesses and
Mhm.
differences, because
Yeah.
that really helped me grow mentally, was to see how different other people can be and how beneficial it is to have all of that in the room.
Yeah.
So I think that
Those
would be
that
one.
pick up
And
stuff.
the other one I would say, just one more plug for EO, is I was lucky enough when I first started my company. I did a really smart thing. Everyone else should do it. I went to the local chamber. I got into a mentorship program,
Yeah.
and my mentor happened to be an EO member. And
Oh,
he was a
beautiful.
part of, they have an accelerator program, which is like an
Oh,
early entry.
yeah.
And I drove my revenue to the minimum
Mhm.
for early entry. Spent 2 years in the accelerator program doing, they
Mhm.
have an entire curriculum called Scaling Up that really, I can't even tell you how immensely that created the base of my company that gives us the
Yeah.
stability today, and the softwares and the programs and everything that we have. And
Mhm.
then transitioning into EO, it has been something I wouldn't be in the same place in my company, and it would not be as positive. So I can't speak
Yeah.
immensely enough about that experience.
Oh,
So.
the Accelerator program is the best value you will ever get in any business activity. If you're trying to grow and scale a
Yes.
company, there's nothing better. And the minimum is 250,000 in revenue. If you're at that number, you can join the Accelerator program. And it is, I mean, as you are a testament to it, right?
Yeah.
And I'll say, having been an EO as long as I have, the best members are the ones who graduate from Accelerator because they
100%.
they've seen it work. They're like, oh my God, this works. I'm never leaving EO. Because how much further can I go? Like
Yes.
you took me from 250 to a million. The sky's the limit.
Well, and
Yeah.
I would say too that this sounds terrible, but the validation that I got, that because EO members can come into the accelerator
Mhm.
program and get the education because they missed out on that.
Yeah.
And
I never
when
got it.
yeah, I mean, when we had the EO members come, and we're just the baby businesses, right? When we were
Mhm.
EOA, but there were things by my second year that I had implemented in my company
Mhm.
that 10-year businesses, now they had figured other ways to get to higher revenue, but they
Yeah.
didn't have the stability of foundation that I knew that I had to then go scale.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that is that when you want to scale, the work you did on your foundation of your company is everything. And it's
Everything.
all about, like you said before, just to do a callback, is did you do the work? Did you have, like you talked about the lawyer, did you have the foundational things? You spend a
Mhm.
little bit of money in the beginning that feels like a lot of money, but to
Yep.
get it right. And it's so you don't have to spend it again later,
Yeah.
it's 10 times that cost. So really
Mhm.
good. We're not sponsored. We're just, advocates. So
Listen, here's the best thing about EO. We pay to be a part of it. Like
sure.
we're both on the board, right? We don't get paid to do that.
Yeah.
No. But we see the value in EO. It's a passion. Like I want every entrepreneur to be a member of EO because
Yeah.
it just changes your life completely, not just in the entrepreneurial space, but from a personal standpoint. Yeah.
Yes. And you
Yeah.
get out of life what you put in it. So
Totally. Yeah.
you want to take advantage of all those opportunities around you.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
awesome. So I'm going to go to my last question. I'm going to make this easy on you, Mark. This is an interesting question for you because I feel like in the space that you're in, you
Hmm.
are about giving people back their relaxation, their time, their mindfulness. So I'm going to call you the mindfulness man. Nurse Mark, what do you do to step away and reconnect for yourself so that you can go
Mm.
give to your company, to your
Yeah.
nonprofit, to your clients?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what I do requires a lot of energy. Like
Hmm.
I have to give of myself every time that I sit with someone or I lead a breath work. It's like I'm giving all of that. And someone asked me that question a little while ago. They're like, dude, how do you recharge? Because it's got to drain you. And I got to be honest, it's not draining at all. Like it's just, while I'm in that giving, I'm receiving. So while I'm leading a breath work, while I'm leading a ceremony, while I'm coaching, I'm receiving back. So it's beautiful. But I do have, a morning ritual that I stick to. It morphs when I'm traveling a little bit, but it's pretty solid. And I have this particular energy meditation that I do, practice that I picked up along the way. And that just allows me to recharge. And I spend a lot of time with people, but it's nice every now and again. I'll take a few days and I'll just be by myself. It'll just be me, just kind of using the practices that I teach everybody else to do,
Yeah,
like breath
practicing what
work.
you preach.
I do regular breath work for sure.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, and I think what I hear from that as being an entrepreneur as well is it's a lot of putting yourself out there, not just what
Mhm.
you do, but what being an entrepreneur is, and
Yeah.
being out and networking and building relations. And it
Mhm.
is so important to step away and take some time alone for
Yeah.
any kind of personality. It's still important to recharge and
Absolutely.
have some quiet time. I
Yeah.
I really cherish my quiet time for sure.
Me too.
Great. Awesome. All right. Well, Mark Worster of The New Mysteries, excuse me.
Yep.
Thank you
Hmm.
so much for your time. I've so enjoyed this conversation. As
Thank
usual,
you.
I'm Tevia Hoalst of Dakota Accounting. Thank you for being with us today. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Debbie.